Okay, then we can start with the first speaker. Is already in the center of the screen. So Otabe, Meiyo Kyoju of Tōkyō University, especially from aesthetics. And so I hope that people on Zoom can see or read the text Professor Otabe prepared for us. I guess that Professor Otabe will first read the text and then we can enter in discussion or we can put questions to Professor Otabe. So Professor Otabe, please.
I would like to express my thanks, especially to Professor Luft Sensei and also Enrico Fonga Sensei for inviting me to this first Congress on Nakai and also for the first Congress which celebrates the 50th anniversary of this institute. So I would like to read my paper. Nakai Masakazu's aesthetic theory is characterized by his interest in the media, especially film and in sports. This aspect reveals Nakai as a modernist. However, as seen in his late work, Japanese Beauty, he also showed a strong interest in traditional Japanese aesthetics. Similarly, in his 1947 essay on the concept of ki, shows a profound insight into Japanese aesthetics. This interest in Japanese beauty and aesthetics did not emerge only in the post-war period. Rather, it was a consistent theme throughout his writings. Concepts such as michi, do, iki, kotsu, and kiai have found the core of Nakai's aesthetic thought from the beginning. Yet, this perspective has received little attention in previous studies of Nakai. This paper examines Nakai's theory of Japanese beauty, emphasizing its modernist features. In 1925, Nakai submitted his thesis, a study on Kant's critique of the power of judgment, and graduated from Kyoto University. During the late 1920s, he immersed himself in the study of Neo-Kantianism, particularly the works of Cohen and Cassirer, as well as Heidegger. Around 1930, he began publishing essays prolifically. In this section, I will examine Nakai's thought on the body with a focus on his writings of the 1930s. In his early writings, drawing on Cassirer's concept of copying upbuilding, Nakai considers human consciousness and the body not as substantial entities, but rather in functional terms. Consciousness is a potential structure capable of projecting an entire world series, while the body serves as a medium of this projection structure. Nakai seeks to elucidate the contribution of this functional concept to aesthetics. He focused on the theory of empathy. Empathy theory, systematized by Theodore Lipps, was favored by modern Japanese philosophers and aestheticians, especially psychologists Sono Raizo and German literature study Professor Tsuzumi Tsuneyoshi. The widespread acceptance of the theory of empathy probably stems from the exceptional role it has played in Western aesthetic thought, where it has theorized the animation of nature, something that is almost evident to the Japanese. According to Nakai, when we experience empathy in response to a natural landscape, there is a projection of the natural composition onto the bodily composition. In other words, the functional similarity between the structure of nature, for example, the vertical orientation of mountains and that of the body, for example, the body's sense of orientation to the vertical axis, underlies what is commonly referred to as empathy. Nakai's interpretation of empathy theory, which emphasizes function and the body, contrasts with contemporary understandings offered by figures such as Sono and Tsuzumi. Furthermore, he rearticulates this functional resemblance as the discovery of the character of existence who, in the presence at hand for Handenheit, or conversely, the recognition of the presence at hand for Handenheit in the character of existence. Thus, Nakai attempts to integrate Cassiera's concepts of function and symbolic form with Heidegger's notion of existence. Nakai's emphasis on the body stands out even among his contemporaries. Nishida Kitaro had already discussed expression in relation to the body in the act of expression and the self-determination of the expressive self. However, it was Tanabe Hajime's 1931 essays that prompted Nishida and the philosophers around him to give serious attention to the body. Nakai, on the other hand, had already emphasized the role of the body in his 1930 essay, The Contribution of the Functional Concept to Aesthetics. His attention to the interest in muscular control in sports or the mental states associated with Iki, Kotsu, and breathing, and his concrete examples like boats and mountaineering pickets reflects his experience as an active member of the mountaineering and rowing class at the third higher school. What is at stake in sports, or even in manners, etiquette, or disciplined practice, is for a person to feel the proper functional adaptability within their own body and muscles. Whether in sports or manners, we must use our bodies appropriately in accordance with the characteristics of a given environment. Nakai uses the term functional adaptability to describe the dynamic relationship between the environment and the body. In this context, Nakai refers to Eastern traditions, noting, in the East, every action is always related to the Michi. He continues, the state of penetrating the natural world through the so-called Kokkyu breathing encapsulates the profound meaning of the East. Later in the 1940s, Okazaki Yoshie and Onishi Yoshinori advocated the theory of Geido, the way of the art. In contrast to the Western concept of art, which focuses on artworks and knowledge, Geido emphasizes artistic practices in the broad sense, encompassing both physical and spiritual discipline. Although Nakai does not use the term Geido in his early writings, his theory serves as a precursor to the later theory of Geido. However, Nakai does not analyze body functions through the lens of Taoist thought. Instead, he focuses on the concept of the technique of nature found in Kant's critique of the power of judgment, which he explored in his graduation thesis. This concept refers to how the mechanical and purposeless workings of nature align with human cognitive faculties and exhibit a kind of purposiveness. Kant understood by nature both individual natural objects, such as tulips or seashells, according to his examples, and organisms. Nakai, on the other hand, proposes to extend the nature and technique of nature to encompass the human body structure. While artistic practice, the broadest sense, is mediated by the body does not function merely as a mechanical instrument in this process. Rather, it perceives a deep lawful order within its own actions. Training and practice then are the means by which one cultivates this lawful body activity. Quote, every form of art in its so-called technique and the inner structure of skill must always be based on a deep trust in the body's inherent technique of nature. That is, the refinement of muscle control. Only then does the importance of training, practice, habituation, aging, maturity, and wabi become apparent. Unquote. Thus, by the technique of nature in the body, Nakai explores the organic sense that Kant, as a Protestant, rejected. This organic sense forms the foundation of artistic practices. It is through training and practice that the technique of nature integrates into the body. Nakai explores this process through the concept of kata. He equates the Japanese term kata with the Western word form. Therefore, I will use form as its translation throughout this paper. While katachi refers to a more concrete shape, kata operates at a deeper level, beyond direct perception, conveying meanings such as a pattern, mold, model, or type. It is worth noting that kata is a central concept in the Geido theory, and to the best of my knowledge, it was first not introduced but theorized by Yanagi Muneyoshi or Soetsu in his 1935 essay, Thoughts on the Way of Tea. In this regard, Nakai's reflections were remarkably pioneering. Nakai explores the concept of form using examples from sports, a field with which he was personally familiar. Because form is not something articulated in words, it lacks the art structure that characterizes conceptual judgment. Instead, it is already intuitively perceived as a force structure and by a certain mood, a kibun, yet remains elusive in practice. Only through a training does one come to recognize it clearly as such. In other words, we only first anticipate form without fully executing it. Then, through continuous training, there comes a moment when form is suddenly understood. That is, it emerges beyond conscious intention. Quote, when one really grasps form, the feeling is utterly uplifting. What is thrown out, that is, what is spontaneously revealed, turns out to be exactly what was originally cast forth. That is what was envisioned or planned. Unquote. Nakai interprets this experience in Heideggerian terminology as Geworfener Entwurf. However, what he means by this diverges from Heidegger's original meaning. Rather, as Nakai himself acknowledged, it corresponds more closely to Oscar Becker's notion of the experience of nature's favor, a concept traceable to Schelling's systems of transcendental idealism. Nakai accurately captures the process by which we grasp form through training. This experience is characterized by a feeling of entrusting oneself to the ore or to the water, a state in which one rolls, if effortlessly despite the greatest effort, that is, in which one finds relaxation even at the height of tension, a mood of acting with full force while at the same time getting into the flow, or an experience of entrusting oneself to something at the extreme limit, that which constitutes the sharp clarity of Ki, aligned spirit. Ki is a shift in orientation, a moment when doing and being done coincide. Nakai's concept of geworfener Entwurf signifies the process of acquiring understanding through one's own actions. More broadly, it suggests that understanding comes through expression. Although Nakai himself does not explicitly use the term expression in this context, the concept was widely employed in the intellectual circles around him. Moreover, the theory of expression was often linked to the theory of Konrad Fiedler, considered the father of general theory of art. Fiedler's theory was frequently referenced by many Japanese philosophers through Nishida's 1970s book. This stands in sharp contrast to its minimal impact on the philosophical community in his native Germany. Fiedler's theory focuses on the visual arts. At its core is the idea that one truly sees by drawing, and that drawing in turn develops the act of seeing. Nakai adds, however, quote, even if we accept Fiedler's claim that all seeing is drawing, we must recognize the infinite and profound distinctions within the act of drawing itself. These distinctions lie in the extent to which the inner technique of nature penetrates into this outer technique of nature, unquote. In Nakai's terminology, the relationship between seeing and drawing is one of projection. The claim that drawing has different stages thus implies that projection also unfolds on different levels. While this paper does not have the space to explore this in detail, Nakai distinguishes between upper objection, reflection, and fundamental projection or orthographic projection. Its emphasis is not on the connection between seeing and drawing, but rather on the process and extent to which one can approach through seeing and through drawing. Furthermore, Nakai extends the relationship between seeing and drawing to that of listening and playing. He thus reinterprets Fiedler's theory as a fundamental structure of human beings as sensory and body existences, a theme closely related to common sense. Here, Nakai's keen insight is particularly evident. In his major post-war works, An Introduction to Aesthetics and the Beauty of Japan, written for a general readership, Nakai does not use the technical term technique of nature. However, the ideas Nakai once explored under this term are revisited in relation to Japanese artistic perspectives. Using boat training as an example and referring to a certain pleasurable, relaxed and comforting feeling of immersion and its aesthetic pleasure gained through training, he explains as follows, quote, this spirit of valuing training and action is only possible when there is a deep trust in a greater reality. The concept of Mahayana in Buddhism, that is, surrendering completely to something vast and finding peace in it, remains alive in the Eastern tradition. It is a bold and daring assertion, one that could even be seen as a fearless challenge to the universe itself. Until the Meiji era, Japanese art was sustained by this grand assertion. Now we must turn our gaze back to it, unquote. Art becomes possible only through a deep trust in the technique and lawfulness inherent in nature, whether it is the inner nature of the body or the outer nature that surrounds humanity. According to Nakai, this trust underlines Mahayana Buddhism. In The Beauty of Japan, he describes the significance of Mahayana Buddhism as a quote, belief that within this reality, the rational remains abundant apart from human activity. Indeed, even within human activity, the rational still persists and will inevitably emerge, unquote. Nakai's aesthetics is characterized by a trust in the technique of nature, both internal and external, as well as the affirmation of human existence through this trust. Let's now turn to Nakai's theory of ki. Through Heidegger's, Nakai emphasizes the disclosure of knowledge inherent in the concept of mood he translated into the word kibun. He also focuses on the sharp clarity of kiai, his sports training. In this way, ki seems to have become a central theme for Nakai. In 1932, he published a paper entitled Katagi, which refers to temperament or character, in which he interprets the ki of katagi as ki. Yet, many contemporary dictionaries traced this word to katagi in the sense of printing block. Therefore, while it may not be etymologically correct to directly link katagi written as temperature to ki, this essay serves as a starting point for Nakai's exploration of the concept of ki. In the following, we will examine Nakai's 1947 paper, The Development of Ki-ke as a Japanese Word. This paper is the result of Nakai's philological and philosophical research that he began in 1942 with the funding from the Imperial Academy, and it remains a crucial reference for any research on ki to this day. According to Nakai, the concept of ki became firmly ingrained in Japanese with its unique meaning during the Heian period, appearing in various monogatari through the term keshiki. Nakai examined examples from works such as Taketori Monogatari, Issei Monogatari, and Genji Monogatari, revealing that keshiki is often used to express emotions, expressions, and the dynamics of feelings such as joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure, as seen in phrases like mono omoeru keshiki, which indicates that someone appears to experience a particular feeling. At the same time, Nakai shows that it is also used to describe natural phenomena, such as in Yuki no Keshiki, which means the appearance of snow. He notes, quote, the people in this time, without consciously perceiving themselves as observers opposed to nature, seem to enter into a timeless sense of desolate existence, as if they were one with nature, unquote. Furthermore, focusing on the usage of the word keshikibamu, that is, teikun keshiki, which applies equally to both humans and nature, Nakai considers ki a sign of life. He explains, the uncontrollable order present in both humans and nature moves within everything. That is, within the sentiments of nature, the workings of heaven and earth, the sky, clouds, mountains, fields, plants, and the causes of their generation. An unexpected order always overflows as a surprising sense of reality. This expression of order seems to have been captured by the term keshiki, unquote. According to Nakai, during the Heian period, ki was a pantheistic reality that entered into nature, the human body, the spirit acting in various ways, unquote. Nakai finds a significant shift occurring during the Kamakura and the Muromachi periods. This idea aligns with the perspective that Song Dynasty China represents a turning point as noted by figures such as Okakura Kakuzo and Naito Konai. Nakai notes that the new sense of the term arose in Taiheiki, a work composed in the 3070s, where the word ki interacts with the Buddhist term ki, giving rise to a new connotation. Ki, in the sense of opportunity or spring, is explained usually as the spiritual ability that lies dormant in the nature of human beings and is activated by exposure to the teachings. According to Nakai, ki refers to the passive self in relation to the Dharma. In line with Nakai's interpretation, let us examine the usage of ki ni noru, literally right on the ki, found 7 times in Taiheiki. This phrase used in scenes where warriors are inspired by the atmosphere of the battlefield. It could be translated as follow the natural flow of the atmosphere. However, in the Taiheiki, this expression, ride on the ki, is also written as ride on ki 7 times, where this character generally means a mechanical spring. Thus, the expression ride on ki can be rendered as ride the momentum. In such contexts, ki and ki are often considered indistinguishable. But Nakai points out that ki is more closely related to psychological aspects, where ki is more about timing or an opportune moment. Thus, he continues, riding on ki means turning one's body in the midst of a singular moment, plunging into it without hesitation, without excess, in order to ride on the ki, that is, to gain freedom within the natural flow, unquote. Ki, which previously functioned as a pantheistic reality, working within nature, humans, and spirit, was still regarded as, quote, something external, unquote. However, through its interaction with the word ki, the sense of ki begins to encompass the element of time where one strives to remain one's rising self and expectations condensing into a decisive moment. This marks a pivotal shift in the concept of ki that Nakai identifies during the Kamakura and Muromachi periods. Reflecting on the earlier analysis in section 1, the issue at hand is the sharp clarity of ki, which seeks to penetrate into the ki as a technique of outer nature through the actions of the body as a technique of inner nature. Nakai further emphasizes that expressions such as Kiyotsukai or Kizikai first appeared during the Muromachi period. The ego that is engaged in kizukai uses its own ki in a reflective manner. Thus, the term kizukai testifies to the emergence of consciousness in the modern sense that controls, utilizes, and exercises its own actions. Nakai pays particular attention to the Edo playwright Chikamatsu Monzaemon, who not only frequently uses kizukai, but also various other expressions involving ki, such as ki o tsukeru, ki ga tsuku, ki o isogu, and ki o mon. For Nakai, these expressions are the linguistic historical signs of the emerging self-awareness of Japanese town people. By directing its own ki toward external phenomena, the ego begins to construct space in a perspectival manner. According to Nakai, the linguistic structure of Meiji, Taisho, and Showa Japan is not too far removed from Chikamatsu's vocabulary. By tracing the rise of modern self-consciousness among Edo town people, his argument centers on the archaeology of Japan's modernity. The next paragraph I would like to skip, but I will read only the last 4 lines. In Introduction to Aesthetics, he recognized the 1700s as the turning point for the birth of modern beauty, drawing a parallel between Shakespeare and Kano Eitoku. Nakai's true intention is probably here. It was Nakai as a modernist who advanced the study of ki. Of course, paralleling Eastern and Western modernity does not diminish their distinctive characteristics. Finally, based on the above analysis, we will examine how Nakai conceptualized the unique qualities of Japanese beauty. In Introduction to Aesthetics and Beauty of Japan, Nakai explores Japanese beauty in opposition to Greek and Hebrew aesthetics. Greek aesthetics, exemplified by the myth of Prometheus and Laocoon, sculpture is defined by a soul that endures suffering. In contrast, Hebrew aesthetics, as reflected in the Messianic faiths, is characterized by a soul that longs for something beyond its suffering. These distinctions extend to architectures as well. In Greek architecture, entasis conveys the act of bearing weight, whereas in Hebrew and later Christian church architecture, towering spires reach towards the heavens. Japanese architecture, however, whether in Kinkakuji or tea house, eschews any sense of weight, embodying only lightness. Thus, from a typological perspective, Nakai portrays lightness as the essence of Japanese beauty. In the Beauty of Japan, Nakai further explores the characteristics of Eastern beauty, by which he refers specifically to Eastern Asian aesthetics. When people think of Eastern beauty, they typically envision the vibrant, dignified, and weighty aesthetic exemplified by both Northern School painting in the academic style. These aesthetics developed under the bureaucratic state apparatus of Northern China. In Japan, it finds its counterparts in the vivid colors of Nikko Toshogu Shrine or the intricate craftsmanship of Netsuke. However, Nakai argues that there exists a second kind of Eastern beauty, one that seeks ever greater simplicity by reducing the number of brushstrokes, beauty achieved through the deliberate elimination of heaviness. Originating in southern China, this aesthetic was developed and championed by the literati, the free-spirited intellectuals of the South. While Japanese painting inherited technical skills from northern China, it tends to reject heaviness in favor of lightness, freedom, change, and fluidity, aligning more closely with southern Chinese styles. In fact, Japanese art exhibits an even stronger affinity with southern aesthetics than southern China itself. This is evident in its deep appreciation of mokkei, active in the late 13th century. A southern Song painter who remained largely unrecognized in China. Nakai's argument here is genealogical in nature, notably in prioritizing the artistic characteristics of southern China over those of north. Nakai shares a perspective with Okakura. According to Nakai, this second kind of beauty is what makes Japanese beauty unique. What exactly does Nakai mean by lightness? Nakai defines the essence of Japanese beauty as a spirit that seeks freshness, remains pure and new, and rejects stagnation, a quality akin to water flowing through a light, soft, and shallow stream. This is a defining quality that not only permeates Japanese beauty, but also serves as the fundamental principle underlying its evolution from the ancient ideals of Sayakesa and Mono no Aware through the medieval concepts of Yugen and Wabi to the Edo period notions of Karumi and Iki. This human mind, especially when it masters something, tends to solidify it into a mania, which can lead to stagnation. In Japanese, mania is called shuki, a habitual stagnation of ki. Therefore, one must break free from one's shuki, the self that has become stagnant and inert. The form discussed earlier in section 1.2 can also become a mania. The meaning of training is to free oneself from the distortions of one's way of being. Therefore, fitting into a form or living within this form is the goal of training. Form exists in a movement and persists only as long as we embody it. However, form is easily objectified and becomes an object of conscious awareness. At this stage, form becomes detached from movement and is seen as something that can repeat itself. And this is when it turns into mania. What is necessary at this moment? Nakai focuses on the phrase "after crossing the path," found in Kamono Chomei's Mumyoshu, emphasizing that the importance of the first undergoing training in poetry, reaching a state of freely composing, and then reversing course, shifting from the uphill path of training to suddenly descending by forgetting everything. In other words, there are times when a genius, having mastered the training to the fullest extent, arrives at a state in which, in a sense, they calmly even break their own form. For those who are training to master form, it exists before them, still elusive and unattainable. Once the training is complete and the form is fully acquired, however, it is no longer before them. Rather, form is something a person lives through. Therefore, unlike a rigid mania that has become fixed and detached from individual circumstances, the form remains a living, growing kata that adapts in new ways to each unique situation. Nakai seems to refer to this shift as a change of direction. Nakai views this change of direction as a defining characteristic of the East, particularly as a remarkable trait that developed in Japan. He argues that capturing this shift through expressions such as after crossing the path represents a cultural heritage first achieved by medieval Japanese art. While this tendency is consistent with the second kind of beauty that originated in southern China, Nakai argues that the significance of medieval Japan lies in the way it explicitly articulated this idea with phrases such as after crossing the path and crystallized it into aesthetic ideals such as wabi and karumi. Furthermore, by recognizing the qualities as resonating with the spirit of modern architecture pursued by Le Corbusier and Taut, Nakai reaffirms its modernist stance. If shuki, habitual stagnation, the key is the opposite of lightness, what concept embodies lightness? Nakai highlights the term kisaki, literally the tip of the key, which was passed down by Basho's students. The Koraisho, a collection of commentaries by Basho and his followers, it is written, Haikai should be composed by kisaki without overthinking. Similarly, Akazuoshi states, if one suppresses kisaki, the verse will not flow on key. Our master taught that one should ride on key. Nakai defines the key as a dynamically fluid force that renews itself daily and never stagnates. As noted at the end of section 1, Nakai's aesthetics is characterized by a trust in the technique of nature, both within and outside of human beings, as well as an affirmation of human existence through this trust. The traditional artistic practices of Japan, deeply rooted in a trust in the technique of nature, convinced him of a modernism that constantly renews itself by responding to the ceaseless movement of key. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, we have, I guess, more or less, yes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we can go a little bit longer than expected. For question, comments, let's start with Jim.
Thank you very much for this paper. It's very educating for me because I don't know Nakai's work directly. What I know of Nakai, I learned through Tsurumi Shunsuke, who carried on Nakai's introduction of pragmatism. There were certain critiques that Tsurumi raised against pragmatism, especially against Dewey, which I wonder if might not be raised also against your presentation of Nakai.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that Shunsuke said there were two things. Tsurumi said there were two things that he learned from Dewey. The first was that all knowledge is gained by engagement with the environment, the surroundings. That all knowledge is bottled, but in a broader sense with the surroundings. So there's no pure cognition without the body. But the second thing is that communicating knowledge, this knowledge that's a body-mind knowledge, is always mediated and transactional. And the medium is not simply a way of sharing information, like a microphone that takes sound and sends it somewhere, but the medium affects the people who are doing the communicating and the people who are communicating. In the 1960s, this was radicalized by a man named Marshall McLuhan, probably unknown in Japan and forgotten, but a very important figure. And Tsurumi's point was that the medium, and in his case, he was interested in the cultural medium, the cultural surroundings, kind of things you're talking about in your paper. But the medium becomes transparent and invisible and naively believed in. And this can happen in all cultural forms, and especially in forms of cultural development. He saw that's what happened to American pragmatism. And Dewey's ideas of education and so forth were institutionalized. But I won't go into that. Now, you have a statement on page 3 that the artistic practice is mediated by the body. I find that very strange. In fact, I think it disagrees with what you say in most of your paper. No, the artistic practice mediates. Is the mediation of body and mind. So this can lead to two kinds of things. It can lead to this aesthetic absorption you talk about, feeling of oneness with the cosmos or whatever. But it can also lead to being under the control of the medium, under an ideology, and specifically under institutionalized forms of ideology. So my question is, the body and the mind is mediated by tools, by media of communication. This media can shape the body and the mind as it functions as a medium, but it must become conscious. And if it doesn't become conscious, it becomes dangerous. I think that was Tanabe's point of introducing the logic of shoot of the specific. My question is this: was Nakai aware of this? Obviously, Tsurumi came after him. But was he aware of the medium is not simply a pure, untouchable, neutral, ethically and intellectually neutral form? For example, in kata, techniques and skills are media, but the kata is also a medium, but the kata can also become a distortion, culturally or otherwise, as we know from what happened to the Bushido theory in the 20th century. Is there some way to attach this critique to Nakai's thought without challenging anything essential? I think this was the question, by the way, that Koyama Iwao asked about Tanabe. Is there some way to append Tanabe's critique of culture into Nishida without destroying anything essential? But that's just me. Sorry if it's a bit confused.
Thank you very much for your question or for your comment. So the medium is for Nakai not neutral. So for the artistic practice, body plays a central role. So for Nakai, body, he uses two words for medium. So medium, so he uses German words, medium und Mitte. So medium might be a little bit neutral, but middle is a starting point to renew oneself. So that means medium is not neutral, but by which we transform ourselves.
You understand that body as being a medium? Because its point of the practice is a body-mind event mediated by a kata or a practice or a tool, something like that. And it seems a little tautological.
So naturally, we practice, namely, the mind of the artist practice, uses mind, but uses body. But body is not a neutral medium. So through body, via body, artists can cultivate the idea. their conceptions.
But you understand the body, or he understands the body as a medium of cognition?
Not only cognition, but also creation, artistic creation.
And then it's only when your conscience get out of the way that your body will find the right form. For instance, in cutting, or in dance, or in swimming. So
I just find it very strange to see the body as a medium of cognition. That sounds like medieval philosophy. Sorry.
So one of the things that I'm really struck by is a discussion of form that kind of takes place outside of the collective. Because when he's first, especially in sports, it's so much about Shudan is this way to unlock a new form that allows you to intervene in historical formation. And so I'm wondering, as he moves into this theory of Japanese aesthetics, is there something that kind of approximates his discussion of Shudan or of collectivity that's so central to his discussion of form in sports? Or does it primarily become something individual in this case?
It's a very difficult question. So to grasp a form must be an individual experience, a personal experience. But he might have believed that this form can be shared by many people, or so, for example, by a team of both. So in this sense, it is certainly a personal experience. So, but it can be shared by many people.
And so it's like by virtue of overcoming yourself and uniting with another, you open yourself up to new forms.
Yeah.
And is there anything like that in his discussion of pre-modern Japanese aesthetics?
So,
like, is it, like Watsuji would say Renga or something like that, or, but I mean, he announced he has Haikai. So just a thought.
So, Watsuji refers to Renga in 1935 book, Fudo. But as far as I know,
it's 27 is the first one.
As far as I know, Nakai didn't mention Renga. So such type of collective artistic process.
Thank you. It's so interesting. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, Bendik?
It's not the question, it's the comment, but I was thinking of the talk. I was thinking about fly fishing, because there's no way to learn fly fishing besides fly fishing. You can try to read that you should stop the road about 2 o'clock, but it doesn't work. I don't think you just have to do it. And even if you have a training issue besides it doesn't hit that much. It's just about the direct experience of doing it. So I'm just thinking that that's an example of that kind of learning form. The comments.
Just a question. Thank you very much for your great talk. It's I think a very good introduction to our seminar. I was wondering how you would connect the presentation you made of key in your paper and just the slight precision that Nakai gives in Rigaku Nyumon, if I read. いいですか？日本語で。しかしその軽さは、先ほどですね、先生がお話になった軽さのことですけれども、極めて緊張したものである、前にも後にも動かしようもない その他には、ありようもない、宇宙間の秩序の中にそのところをしっかりと把握しようとしているような、心持ちなのである。So it's fluid, it's light, but it can't move. So how do you address this kind of contradiction between lightness, fluidness, and an ability to move?
So maybe so Nakai uses the word hazumi very often. So and so he understands by hazumi. So for him, so the word hazumi has the same character as ki. So ki is so promised nature, but we have to grasp a right moment as a springboard, as hazumi. So both moments exist in his philosophy. So fluidity, but at the same time, the right moment. So this is exemplified by his theory of ki, so written by two characters.
Okay. Thank you so much for your thank you. And for this first time that I did philosophy in Nakai, I see I'm also that my question is very marginal. So but on the page A5 you said about the relations between the Nakai's aesthetics and the Mahayana Buddhism. So you said you cited the concept of violent Buddhism is surrounding conflict with something vast and finding peace in it. So I'm wondering whether we can interpret the Mahayana Buddhism only that way, because Mahayana is necessary to get the plenty of conditions. And next, you said it is a more than daily solution, one that could even be seen as a fearless challenge to the universe itself. So can you explain these two things? For me, it sounds such like
Yes. Thank you for your comment. As I read this sentence, I got the same impression as you. So, but now I interpret so as follows. So, for Nakai, the Mahayana Buddhism represents also a modernist movement. So, naturally, we should surrender ourselves. But to this process, so we have a new consciousness, so a right consciousness. And for him, it is a modern, in this surrendering, so Nakai finds some modernist moment. Therefore, he asserts that this is a daring assertion, I think. Maybe it might be strange, but so Nakai insists on the modernist tendency in East Asian tradition, but tries to find.
He's a modernist.
A modernist in the art. So there were two moments. First, to construct the world from a specific point of view. So this is clearly said by Nakai. The starting point is the 1600. And the other moment is to negate oneself. And so not follow the authority, but negate it, only question the authority and negate oneself. This is also the characteristic of modernity. And for him, the Mahayana Buddhism can be characterized as modernist in the second sense. So negating,
So I have an investment though, and that is modernist specifically. I understand Nakai's sense of history and this kind of in the beginning, the 1600s, we have this radical shift right towards an individual, Copernican revolution. But then here it's about renewing something, right? You go back to a source of some kind, and this becomes this sort of ceaseless activity, this kind of dynamic activity. So, yeah, I guess I'm just sort of thinking like what the stakes of this are. I understand that idea of a second thing of rebellion against authority. That could be anywhere at any time. Does that have to be modernist?
Yeah, that's right.
So somewhere, yeah. I'm not sure what my question is, but somehow kind of finding my way, because people often describe Nakai as a modernist. And sometimes I think that's true, and we feel that sense from what he says, and other times I don't think so at all. And so that's why I'm trying to think. Modernism as an art practice might be different from modernity more generally.
So, for example, so he distinguishes two types of beauty in China, the northern one and the southern one, and he identified himself with the second southern types of beauty, and he characterizes as, in some sense, he characterizes the southern beauty as modern. Naturally, it existed from the beginning in the South China, but so he finds in it some kind of modern element. So it might be ambiguous. This is. I agree. Yes.
Professor, small question.
Yes, Senor, please.
For a very insightful presentation. My question is a small one concerning key. On page 6, you mentioned keshiki, which is, as far as I understand, usually used in the meaning of landscape. So, any idea of perspective connect related with Japanese unique theory of landscape or perspective?
Thank you very much. So now, we use another Chinese character to designate keshiki as in the sense of landscape. But this meaning was established only later years. So in Heian and period, naturally, there was expression yuki no keshiki or yama no keshiki, but this is not a landscape in the modern sense. But it is an atmosphere of snow, or it was a kind of feeling of and it is also the noun used with keshiki is always very it's also very universal. Yama or soda or it is not a particular landscape. Only in the later years, so the Japanese word keshiki in the sense of landscape was established.
The Kotsu Kiai Kokyu it kind of starts as like a book review, right? Of Kuroda.
Yes, that's right.
Kuroda nandake?
Yo.
Kuroda Yo. The Kanno Kenkyu.
Yes.
So is there anything like in that work? Does he talk? Because I've looked for the Kuroda work and I haven't been able to find it. Is there anything? Does he talk about like ki in the kind of same way that Nakai does, or like is it totally different? Sorry, this is just for my own enlightenment.
Yes. So
as a professor of aesthetics, I'm very asking this question.
So Nakai wrote a review of the Kuroda's book. Yes. Kuroda uses the Buddhistic conceptions and like kaku and shiki to analyze the phenomenon of kotsu. And also Nakai often uses, not often, but sometimes uses these words, kaku and shiki. Kaku is a superficial knowledge and the shiki is a deep knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Okay, last question.
Thank you for interesting presentation. And I want to ask one question about his study of key. Nakai studied key just after he was arrested in Chiaijigo. And at the same time, it is known that he read Shijitsugan. I don't know how to say in English. Shijitsugan, long Chinese histories. I'm sorry, but I've never read Shijitsugan, so I don't know where it is. So if you know that some relation between his study of key and his experience of read Shijitsugan.
So as far as no, so I find no connection, but anyway, so he didn't analyze the Chinese concept of ki as the name chi. But in his essay on Katagi, he referred to Kin Seido only once, but he never analyzed the concept, unfortunately. Maybe it is an interesting theme. So
it was some said that it was big experience to read Shijitsugan, but he was only hear about something Chinese, so I don't know why it was so big experience for Nakai. So I want to know the influence by Shijitsugan. So thank you.
So thank you very much, Professor Otabe. I'm sorry, but we have to move to the next presentation. Thank you so much.